I didn't write back yet. I said you gotta take.
Make sure it's off. It's awfully quiet when they go live.
Mics are on.
It's always the longest minute.
Oh, I know, right? Close enough. That clock says it's time. Call the meeting to order. I want to acknowledge that we are on the unceded territory of the Upper Smokeman Indian Band. The adoption of the agenda. Any additions or errors? I have one addition for new business, letter and survey results.
I'll move to adopt as amended.
Thank you. Cool, seconder.
Second.
Councillor Willis. All in favor? So moved. Thank you. Adoption of the minutes. We have the December 16th, 2019 regular meeting of council. We got a motion to adopt.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Willis, or Councillor Elliott. Seconder? Coyne, I think I was on. Any errors or omissions? All in favor? So moved. December 18, 2019 special meeting of council. Motion to accept the minutes. Councillor Coyne, seconder. Councillor Gould. Any errors or omissions? All in favor? So moved. Thank you. The December 20th special meeting of council minutes.
So move, Mr. Mayor.
Forgot about that. Councillor Willis, seconder.
I'll second.
Any errors or omissions? All in favor? So moved. Thank you. Petitions and delegations. We have one tonight. We have Don Nettleton from the Chief Executive Officer from the Okanagan Regional Library. Come on up, Don. He does have a presentation.
We do. Thank you, Your Worship, for the opportunity to present to you. Purpose tonight is just to take the opportunity to give you kind of an overview of the library system as a whole. It's been a while since we've had a chance to do that. Sort of what's changed, what things are happening, and also just to talk a little bit about some of the things happening locally in Princeton. So I'll just try and see if I can get this mouse figured out here. And where's my quick? There we go, okay. There we go. Oh. Just have to go that way, I guess. Okay, we'll see how we get going here. Overall, we serve a fairly large population, about 400,000 people. We do that, we cover an area that's... You know what, I'm going to pass it back to you. No.
Are you left-handed?
Okay, that sounds good. I'll just kind of point at you or something. That sounds good. We cover an area from Princeton down here all the way back through the Okanagan, up around the shoe swap and across over to Golden. The only exception to that really is the city of Penticton. We do it through a bunch of branches, 31 now. A couple of those are new since the last time that I would have, anybody's been down here to talk to you. We have a new location that's just a pick up and drop off at the UBC Okanagan campus within their library in Kelowna. And also the West Bank First Nation has a location, it's a learning center, which is just basically a technical IT type of equipment, very few books, and so that opened last year as well. We have 24-member board. Each of our board is elected councillor from, or a mayor from one of the members of the library. In your particular case, it's Councillor McLean and Councillor Elliott's the alternate, so we enjoy having both of them, and I think this is probably the second or third round that Councillor McLean's had with us. So we appreciate just all of our board members. We have one vote per member, except for on things such as budget, it's a weighted vote type system based on population. We've got, computers are a big part of what we do, obviously. Free Wi-Fi is one of the services we offer, and we have about 300 public terminals. We also have about 500 or 600 items altogether that our IT department looks after. You'll see people gathered around our branches lots of times, even when they're closed, particularly in the summer. That can be interesting. People say, well, all these people hanging about, but just getting that chance for free Wi-Fi is a key part of our services, actually. Some of our trends, people would have asked a few years back, is there a future for the library, or what is the future? We're seeing growth. It's just a little different areas sometimes than what we've traditionally might have done. Programs is a big part of it, so you'll see over 157,000 people would have attended our programs last year. It's about an 8% increase over 2016. Circulation materials was up about 3.5 million, up about 1.7%. If you want to jump to the next slide there, you'll see though that on the left-hand side, part of the breakdown of what that circulation includes is e-books and e-audiobooks, a little over 500,000. And that's a 47% increase over what it would have been in 2016. So a large increase in some of the electronic items and that sort of thing. Books and materials are kind of staying relatively constant, dropping off maybe a little bit, but still by far the most of what we do. But the electronic part of it is a big part of what we do now. That's one of the things that we appreciate the support of our municipal members. It's been a challenge for us, as you know, to get some of those books and materials. It's been a challenge for libraries right through North America. One of the things we're running into is our cost for an e-book, for instance, would be probably $60 to $80. Typical public member might pay $15 to go purchase one yourself. And ours have limits to the amount that can be read to maybe a dozen times, or they disappear entirely in a year or two. One of the main publishers, Macmillan, has even had an embargo where libraries can't even get new materials for over 3 months, 3 or 4 months after they've been released. So those kind of things, we're asking continued support from our municipal members and others to put pressure on the publishers and also perhaps the Canadian government, American government, to put some legislation and things so we have similar access to what we have for books and materials. Programming for adults is a big part of what we do now. It didn't used to be 5 or 6 years ago. You can see this particular senior citizen was somebody who attended one of our digital classes. He was standing in front of a green screen. I asked him, what was it you wanted to do with your life? He said, I would love to have been a fighter pilot. So, he's superimposed himself in a fighter jet and ready to take off on his new adventure. But, learning how to do digital, how to handle digital materials, doing things like accessing government resources, all kinds of different reading and learning are things that we have a lot of speakers and that sort of thing that come in and programs that we share with. Children's programming has always kind of been a traditional thing we do. You'll all probably have heard of or been involved with the Summer Reading Club. It's been around for a long time. Story time, baby time, and American Sign Language. But one of the things we've done a lot in the last little while is STEAM programming, which is the whole area of digital training. So science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. And there's a lot of that kind of thing that children as well as adults need to learn. And so we've got little Ozobots, little coding toys, other things which really help to teach some of those things. Even adults find them sometimes they're more interested than the children when they're brought out. And so we're trying to make sure that people in the 21st century have the skills that they need to get by. Digital literacy, one of the things we've done is, as we're able to raise special donations or other money, we've been able to open a few maker spaces and training labs. I already mentioned, go to the next slide, I've mentioned the West Side Learning Center on the West Bank Indian land. That opened last February. It's basically all kinds of sound recording. It's got all kinds of things for digital editing, for converting things from one format to another. In the summertime, we were able to do something similar in downtown Kelowna. At their main library there, we converted a meeting room into a makerspace. That was again through a bunch of corporate funding that we were able to get. The Columbia Basin Trust had some funding that we were able to access in Golden, so we were able to open a similar site in Golden, and then in Revelstoke, they're adding on to the library so we can, with Columbia Basin Trust money, so we can open that hopefully by summer. And we'll just be announcing some additional funding that was provided in Vernon to allow them to also have a makerspace that's kind of shared with their science center and other things. So those kind of things are areas the library is getting into, because that's just part of what people need to learn in the coming 21st century. As far as funding goes, our budget is just about $20 million. One of the things I wanted, maybe jump ahead to the next one, and one more. If you look at this graph, it outlines that most of our funding comes from the local taxpayer, the one on the right. Just about 92 or 92% comes from there. About 5% from the province, and others are just assorted small amounts. If you look back about 30 years ago, 25, 30 years ago, you'll see that the provincial share was between 20 and 25%. What's happened is that in the last 10 years, the province has totally frozen funding for libraries. Prior to that, very little increase for a number of years. And so that has forced the local taxpayer to pick up on those particular things. And it's really made it difficult, particularly in rural areas. So any of you who were at UBCM last year probably saw the library campaign, which was $20 million in 2020. That was a recognition that the $14 million that's currently there for libraries throughout the province would be $20 million if it just had the normal inflationary increases. So we're hopeful that the province has listened. They will find out in their next budget, but continue to petition your local ministers of finance, education, that sort of thing, that to add that extra money, because it really does make a big difference in the operations of libraries. Maybe jump to the next one, it's easier to read. Just as a breakdown of our budget, about half of it is in wages and benefits. Our facilities costs are almost 20%. Our books and materials are about 15%, a little bit for computers, and then just small amounts for reserves and debt repayment and that sort of thing. Next slide, yeah. We think we give really good value. One of our challenges, though, is we're about 30% below the provincial average for libraries in the province. And given that we're one of the larger libraries, if we're 30% below, that means there's an awful lot that are above that provincial average as well. So that puts, even though we're fairly efficient as a regional system, that does put a lot of challenge on us to provide the kinds of services with the kind of increasing costs for electronic materials and other things that we need. So I think you'll see over the next while adjustments larger than inflation for a number of years to try and close that gap so we can provide the kind of services that we need to. When you're about 30% lower, it is a challenge. If you jump to the next screen there, you'll see on our about halfway down, there's an expenditures and salaries and benefits per capita. Provincial average would be about 35.41. We were 23.75. The one below that, expenditures excluding facilities per capita, is 48.67, and we're at 34.34. You can see in a lot of those areas, there's quite a discrepancy, and so our challenge is going to be just to continue to maintain services. We have reallocated close to $1 million within our own budgets. It's a process that was called, our board and vote called FAMA. It was to sort of adjust the money coming in from the local taxpayer to what's being spent in that area. This library here, as you know, got kind of caught in that a little bit because there was more being spent here. And I want to commend you for stepping up a little bit to put in additional monies to maintain the number of hours of service that your branch has. That was about 4 or 5 years ago, and it has made a huge difference to this community, I know. If you want to. You can probably jump ahead one more. This is the future going to go? I think you're going to see continuing programming increases for all ages, adults and children. We're going to be doing increasing digital literacy training. And our digital collections, as you can see from the growing usage, that will be an increasing area of our spending, and some of these community hubs and also maker spaces and that sort of thing. I think you'll see a bit more of that as additional dollars get raised. We are just in the process, partway into developing our strategic plan. The board actually, middle of last week, had a all-day session with one of the consultants and starting to develop that. And so that should be done in a couple of months, which will give more of the details of exactly some of the things we'll be doing. But that's kind of the direction of where we're heading. Carry forward. Staffing, just a quick comment on that. We have about 250 employees, which is about 110 full-time equivalent. And a lot of our branches are not open the full 35, 40 hours, so that they would have just part-time employees. Most of our employees are in the QP union. We have some professional librarians that are in PEA. We have a few non-union branches as well. One of the things that we're finding that's happening is that just like is happening in lots of other places, as staff are getting aging, we're finding a lot of retirements. In the past year, our director of Human Resources said that we had just had 12 people retire. They had 283 years of service with us, so that's an average of 23 and a half years per person. So when you see that kind of loss of history and knowledge, that's a big loss for an organization. On the other hand, it's a great opportunity to bring in new people with new training, new ideas, and so there's a renewal that's happening, and so we're sad to see some of them go, but we're enjoying some of the ideas of some of the new people coming as well. As far as our local branch goes, I had a few notes from Jeremy, that your local librarian, who said a few things that he wanted to highlight. As far as usage and circulation, you're around 30,000, a little over 30,000 circulations out of this branch. Total attendance, including with meetings and that sort of thing, is about 34, almost 3,500. People count of people that would have just walked in the doors is just between 32,000, 33,000, and that was just to the end of November. They mentioned that they had a ton of teenagers sign up for cards and just hanging out in the branch for the spring break. Said it got a bit loud, but was tons of fun having the branch so packed with new faces. And he said some of the book requests he got made him feel kind of outdated. He's a lot younger than I am. He mentioned that he's worked a lot with the community to try and offer a wide range of programs as well as outreach services. They expanded some programs to new areas of interest. Some of the previous programs, they had a 3rd annual Readers and Writers Festival, a lot of workshops for the public. Summer Reading Club and Storytime continued to have high attendance. They did Tech for Seniors. It said continue to help with technology that can seem daunting in a relaxed, friendly environment. Then they did a knitting club, Sharing Stitches, which again brings in another segment of the public. They had some of their 2019 programs included Dungeons and Dragons. It kicked off in August, and he said it's already at full capacity. A poetry competition where they had 9 authors with original works and poetry reading, as well as the published winning poem in the local paper. They had junior STEAM programs, which again we mentioned, science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. So that's Coding for Kids and Robot Invasion Workshop, where they paired with the John Allison and Vermilion Forks Elementary Schools and had the classes come into the branch. And he said one of their best new programs was our Plant and Seed Swap. They had kindergarten and grade 1 students showing them how to get library cards, doing fun activities. And they had booths at both the Canada Day and Christmas light-up celebrations just to connect other people in the community. And he said he just wants to thank the town for your overwhelming help. And again, we're in your building, so I know you helped to keep some of the maintenance and that sort of aspects up on that building as well. So those are the things that Jeremy wanted to highlight, and I think we're really happy with some of the things that are going on in your branch. I think there's a good staff there, and I just want to thank you for your support and open it to any questions that you might have or anything. Okay. Well, that was good.
Thank you.
All right.
It's my second time with this, so.
Yeah, that's right. I was going to say there's a few people in the regional district that have sit through it twice. Was it better at the regional district or
Oh,
here?
this is way better.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thanks, you guys.
Okay. So we'll move on to number 5, no unfinished business, there is none. Staff reports is number 6. First one is property tax write-off. We have a staff recommendation. Does anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Cool, seconder? Any questions? No? Okay. All in favor? Thank you. 6.2, development variance permit application for lots 1 to 4, 9th Avenue. We have a staff recommendation that the variance permit be approved. Somebody make the motion?
I'll make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Seconder?
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
I see a pattern. Any questions on this one? Councilor Gould?
Did we hear back from the neighbors on that with any concerns?
I don't think we've received anything, no.
No? Okay. How many residences are beside that, like on that block? Just one, I think? Yeah. It looks like it's just one, but,
I think there's one house there.
yeah, it doesn't look like it's a big impact, but a necessary impact. Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Then I shall call the question. All in favor? So moved. Thank you. 6.3, Wild Safe Community Coordinator Program. We have a staff recommendation that council authorize, and I want to make a motion.
So move, Mr. Mayor.
Willis, seconded by Councilor Elliott. Any questions? Yeah, Councilor Gould.
I'm really excited about this. I'm glad we're applying for it again. It's necessary. I'm hopeful we get it. Like, I know that they warned us last year that it was probably going to be our last year and that we should be self-sustained at this point, but I totally support an application for funding.
Any further questions? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? So moved. Thank you. 6.4, Housing Needs Study. Recommendation to council award the Housing Needs Report project to Urbanomics Consulting Limited for the sum of $19,000, including taxes and disbursements.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, and there's a
Yeah.
support. And staff oversee, see, that's why I wasn't going to read it. And staff oversee the project completion as per the provincial requirements of the Housing Needs Report.
And I still move it.
Seconded by Councilor McLean. Questions?
Do we know how long this will take?
That I'm not sure, but it's not a big project, and actually, there's about 50 different bits of criteria that they have to collect, but a lot of it is online, and it's just bringing the information together. Then there will be some surveys, community engagement, or whatever, so I'm anticipating 3-4 months kind of thing. It won't be a long project.
Be interesting to see.
Yeah.
Councilor McLean?
Along that vein, is there an opportunity for us to be able to make them aware of the urgency and as far as we're concerned in terms of receiving any information we can get?
Yeah, we actually have a couple years to actually get it done, but as I know that this council's intention is to get it done relatively quickly so we can get on with making decisions, so we'll push it along.
Yeah, we're ahead of a lot of the other
Yeah.
communities already.
Would there be something that you could receive parts of it as it was being done, or you would just simply wait till it was all completed before you got it?
Probably wait till it's done. 'Cause then it all come together and make sense, right?
Yeah, because I imagine there's going to be some interesting things along the way that would be neat to know, even if they kept the CAO in the loop sort of thing, and yourself.
Yeah. We can always ask them. Any further questions? All in favor? So moved. Thank you. Council reports. Let's start with Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I know you had some meetings.
Yes, I actually did, just this last week. January 15th, went to the Princeton Arts Council meeting. They've got some pretty exciting things coming up for this year. January 16th, in the morning, I attended the Interagency Committee meeting, and then that evening, I went to the Princeton Museum Society meeting, and that's my report.
Councilor McLean.
Not very much. I happened to bump into the CEO or whatever of BC Green today and made him aware that in my mind, the council's, one of the council's priorities is dealing with the housing situation and doing everything we can to try and facilitate that and move it forward, that sort of thing. They're up against permitting and that sort of thing, waiting on the government, but it sounds as if things go through and that sort of thing, as you've probably been told, they're hoping for a March beginning of operation sort of thing, so. The other side, I suppose, is Posse. Our junior hockey team has been doing extremely well. We've reached a 20-win plateau, which we haven't reached for some time. We have probably in the neighborhood of 13 games to go yet, so we're second in our division, and just finished winning a game the other day against one of the top teams in the Eastern Conference. So it's the only thing I'd like to see is participation. You see these kids and they're doing wonderfully. You put out a great effort, win or lose every game, and you'd like to see people taking advantage of that and enjoying it. And I guess from our perspective, we have to do a better job in terms of getting that information out to people and seeing if we can't make them aware of what's going on. Anyway, it's nice to be able to back a winner for.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councilor Willis.
On the 15th, I met with Director of Recreation, Cody Naples, and yeah, we had a good talk about the pickleballs and the pickle gate, or whatever we call it. But yeah, there's a bunch of things going on there, and yeah, that's my report there.
Councilor Gould.
I have nothing to report.
You guys do, though. Oh, it goes back to December 6th, 17th.
It's in the minutes.
Okay, I'll do it. December 17th, I had a SIMIA meeting. We did it by phone, thankfully. Then on the 17th of December as well, I had a Princeton Healthcare Steering Committee meeting. That was an interesting one. We discussed the PCN planning and the possible positions that would come with a primary care network on top of what we already have. They've got some rough idea of what we're looking at and extra staff recruit, but nothing solid yet until the province says for sure that these are our numbers. And they're consulting with doctors because our primary care network is Princeton and Karamia, so they have to divide it based on population between here and Karamia. So hopefully soon we'll know where we sit on all that. So, the 17th later, we had a skill center meeting. December 18th, we had the special meeting of council. December 19th, I had a regional district board meeting. December 20th, we had a special meeting of council, and we had our staff lunch. And I just want to take this as an opportunity to say thank you to our public works crew. They worked, it was supposed to be our Christmas staff party. They skipped the staff party. They worked till I think it was 5 or 6 o'clock that night, nonstop. And kudos to them. And I think they did a pretty good job. January 9th, I had a regional district meeting, and today I was at the high school for 2 different things. One was I met with the student council at the high school, and we're having a little discussion on what maybe we could do as a joint council meeting at some point between them and us, and bring their concerns to the public, and how we could just reach out and get to know each other. And the other one is I went to the first boys group at PSS. This is a peer mentoring program that's going to be run, it's run through the Aboriginal Support Faculty. And they have a girls group, and this is the first time they've been able to have a boys group at the high school. And that's my report. Yes?
With respect to snow clearing and that, I wonder if the CAO could answer. I think most people are aware that we've had some problems with equipment. Could you kind of update us on where we are in terms of that?
The director is here, but I'll just sort of start it off. And I mean, some of our equipment is getting older, and we did experience a few breakdowns this year. We have a plan in place to replace the aging equipment, and I think going forward, you'll see us start to introduce to council opportunities to upgrade some equipment.
The items were?
The main one was our snow blower. We were experiencing some trouble with it last year. We actually wanted to replace it last year, but the tenders came in higher than we expected. So we rolled it into this year, but unfortunately the repairs we made to it just, do you know how old it is? I mean, it's gotta be 35. Yeah, it's worn out. So that's a high priority replacement item for us.
Was there any other items in the wish list, or?
There goes Gary's
I'm looking
budget.
for the next major one.
There's gonna be a few major ones. Well, there's gonna be a snow blower one, and there's gonna be a request for another piece of equipment that is a versatile piece of equipment that we can use to do many things with. It has about 25 attachments to it.
We'll bring that forward at the next budget deliberation.
Yeah, anyway, it's just, obviously, it's a tough thing when you get 2 feet of snow in a day and a half. It's tough to compete with that, and it's just important that people know that they did their best with the equipment that we had available, so,
It's hard on equipment as well when you
Yeah.
get that kind of volume.
thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to correspondence received and filed. 8.1 is a letter from Southern Ontario Local Government Association calling for, resolutions. 8.2 is nominations from SELGA as well, and 8.3 is the Wildsafe Princeton Annual Report. We have a motion to receive and file 8.1 to 8.3.
So moved.
Seconder?
I'll second.
Counselor Gould. Any questions? Call the question, all in favor? So moved. Correspondence action requested. We have 9.1 Ultraman 520K Canada is requesting, as in the past, to use the Princeton District Arena for the event in August 2020. We have a staff recommendation to allow it.
So move, Mr. Mayor.
Seconder? Counselor McLean. Questions? All in favor? So moved, thank you. 9.2 is the Princeton Sled Dog Association request to use the sand dunes to develop a groom trail for the purpose of training on an annual basis. And we have a staff recommendation that council approve the request. Somebody want to make it
So
happen?
move, Mr. Mayor.
Counselor Elliott, seconder.
I'll second.
Gould, any questions? Counselor Gould?
I know that area is frequented by locals for tobogganing as well as snowmobiling up there. Is that going to interfere with their track?
Well, snowmobiling probably wouldn't be. It'd be similar to, the cross-country ski trails. You really wouldn't want to have people, on them. They're going to be specific use. The proponent is here, actually, but.
Can I answer that for you?
Sure.
Sure.
Oh,
Actually,
sorry.
there's no problem with snowmobiles, they help pack the trail.
Okay.
The thing that would be detrimental to the trails would only be something like side-by-sides or people going up there and digging holes, but no,
Ruts. Okay.
I can see no problem with snowmobiles being out there.
Perfect. A multi-use facility.
I think the idea is to get approval to use it, and then we'll work with the details as we move along.
Have you done it before there?
Pardon?
Have you done anything up there before like that, or?
Not myself,
No,
no.
but nobody has?
Not there.
No? That's awesome.
There's been snowmobile
Any other
races up there.
questions?
Yeah.
Counselor McLean?
I'm wondering if we can look forward to at some point in time, a sled dog race.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, this is what we'd like to see in the
Intention.
future, but it's up until we can get a population of people coming
definitely.
And it's not just a winter sport. A lot of people don't understand that it's also dry land racing. This is why I would like to use it year-round, other than summer. It's too hot to run dogs in the summer, but spring, fall, and winter, it's being used for different events.
Okay, call the question, all in favor? So, thank you. 9.3, we have a letter from Mary Maciel requesting the downtown sidewalks be heated and not wooden. And we have a recommendation that it goes to budget. Make that.
I'll make that motion.
Cool. Seconder. I'll second the rose. Barb, Tyler. Any questions?
The only thing that I'd love to see accompany our reply is that they are wooden sidewalks, but they're, what we're proposing, they are wooden sidewalks, but they're not wooden sidewalks.
Yeah.
And trying to get through just what we're talking about, because we're not talking about going and cutting a 2x4 and putting it down and walking on it. It's a long ways away from that, and trying to, be nice to maybe have a presentation in the paper or something of the presentation that we got in terms of making people understand it.
So something I can work on with Gary, or, with Gary, is we can put that presentation on our website and our social media to kind of explain that.
Yeah, showing that it used in Vancouver, right? It's,
Yeah, it's
wasn't it down there? Wasn't it used down in the?
Yeah, it's
The
used in
new-
a bunch of different places.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah, I think the big thing is the heated part.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, all in favor? Bylaws and resolutions. 10.1 is Okanagan Smoke Mean Inter-Community Business License Expansion to the City of Nettleton, District of Revelstoke, and District of Sycamore. The recommendation that we give this, that the Town of Princeton Inter-Community Business License Amendment Bylaw number 72/2002 be given first, second, and third reading. Councilor McLean, seconder. Councilor Elliott. Any questions about this?
Yeah, so does this mean that a business license for Princeton would be recognized in these communities as well as the other ones on the list?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you buy a license here, it's not this, it's an addition to your normal business license, and allows you to work within the whole region.
Perfect.
Any other,
No, I just.
Any other
wanted to
questions?
see what it would do for business.
all in favor? So- 10.2, official community plan zoning bylaw amendment for cannabis. Recommendation, I'll read this whole one for you. That bylaw number 977/2002, or 2020, sorry. Town of Princeton official community plan amendment bylaw be read a first and second time and proceed to public hearing, and that in accordance to section 477 of the Local Government Act, council has considered OCP amendment bylaw, sorry, number 977/2020, in conjunction with its financial and applicable waste management plans, and that bylaw number 978/2020, Town of Princeton zoning amendment bylaw be read a first and second time and proceed to public hearing, and that the holding of the public hearing be scheduled for February 3rd, 2020, and that staff give notice of the public hearing in accordance with the requirements of Local Government Act.
I missed part of that. Could you,
No. Anybody want to make that motion?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Willis, seconder. Councilor McLean. Any questions? Okay, all in favor? So moved. Thank you. Okay. That takes us on to new business, and that's a letter and survey results. So as you all know, we put a survey online, kind of in jest, to see if the public was in favor of having the Prince and Duchess to send an invite to them to move to our fair town. We've had 351, we probably had a few more by now, respondents, and 196 were yes and 155 were no. So I would like a motion that we send a letter to the Prince and the Duchess. Not only explaining how wonderful it is here, but also to invite them to our fair community when they settle in Canada, and at least for a visit, if not to move here. Somebody want to move that? Councillor Elliott?
I'll
Seconded
second.
by Councillor Gould. Any questions?
I would certainly emphasize, though, somewhere in the letter that you explain it's the 160th birthday of Princeton, and we would really appreciate at least a visit.
Yes, and that's the idea. It was named after his great-great-great-grandfather, so.
Thank you.
All in favor? So moved. Thanks. And now we have a recommendation that we go into closed. Somebody want to make that?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you. I'll second on Mr. Murphy. All in favor? So moved.